We're tracking breaking news in the shooting at Robb Elementary. Uvalde police in the local school district are now refusing to and no longer cooperating with the wider Texas probe of the actual police response to this shooting massacre. This is reporting from ABC News, and multiple law enforcement sources are cited. NBC has not separately confirmed this. It comes within a week of the Texas mass school shooting, those funerals beginning today. Here's just some of that difficult process as a story that many left behind over the weekend continues to affect all the people's lives in that community. As for action in Washington, there is a bipartisan group of senators who say they are meeting. This is a virtual meeting today about potential action. The House Judiciary Committee will hold an emergency hearing this week, Thursday, and the president says that he believes that the lead negotiator for the Republicans, John Cornyn, and Mitch McConnell himself will be, quote, rational and might even compromise. Now, that could be something that you don't read literally. This president, in this moment, trying to give a lane, an option, something to get something through the Senate if he can't get the 50 votes to change the obstruction rules. But again, we have to look at what's actually being said and done. Here's McConnell today dodging questions about gun laws and citing other issues.
Senator McConnell, any comments on the gun control issue going on right now? You had said possibly that you were open to
what we're doing, we have a group led by Senator Cornyn and Senator Murphy on the Democratic side, discussing how we might be able to come together to target the problem, which is mental illness and school safety. We'll get back at it next week and hope to have some results.
Now, there you have it. He represents his constituents. He is saying where he stands, it's a long ways from the hope for any type of gun or ammunition regulation or background checks, which go to who can get there. When he says mental illness and school safety, it's really other issues. And there may be things that can be done on those issues. It's not to rule those out. But how can two sides discuss meeting and meeting in a middle when they don't agree on the topic at hand? Because many people who don't look at this politically, but just look at it as safety policy, are of the view, and most of the American public is of the view, that there are steps to be taken that would reduce the access to weapons of war and reduce the risk of this kind of mass murder. So either you're meeting about that or you're not. Now, the pivot, this is part of the politics. On the one hand, it's a sign that saying nothing or demonizing the other side for demanding action doesn't work very well right now. That was the NRA playbook. You're not even allowed to discuss it, that somehow that disrespects the victims. Now we see pivot, pivot, pivot. Take all of this from last week.
Don't have all of these unlocked back doors. Install bulletproof doors and locking classroom doors.
The most effective tool for keeping kids safe is armed law enforcement on the campus.
What stops armed bad guys is armed good guys. Absent fathers, declining church attendance, video games.
If you could wave a magic wand and eliminate all firearms in America, there would be substantially more murders.
It's never been about guns.
It's never been about guns. That's one view of the gun violence epidemic in schools. Of course, if you take away the guns, well, then you just have schools. And you might not need all of this talk about locksmiths and special locks and special doors, like kids don't go in and out of schools. Now, that was the top senator for the state of Texas that's home to this horrible tragedy. But this grinds on in other states. Over this long weekend, there were 12 mass shootings, some of them not quote-unquote large enough by the grim body count to make the national impact that that shooting did. So what do you do when you don't have agreement on the topic, let alone the solution? And is there a lane here for those who are solution-oriented? Well, we have Obama veteran Sheikh Omenduri, who thinks a little different, if I may say so myself, and he's going to think different.
Don't have all of these unlocked back doors. Have one door into and out of the school.
I see. So this wasn't a gun problem. This was a door problem. This is... You know who may have a problem with that? The fire department might have a problem with that. What a stupid, fake idea.
Now we bring in political strategist Che Komanduri, a veteran of several presidential campaigns, including Obama's. Welcome back.
Good to be back, Ari.
You know, we play that because this would be funny if it wasn't so serious, although there was a Russian dissident who told us in the hardest times you laugh through the tears. And certainly people are laughing at Ted Cruz's claims and ideas. It's a word salad that seems to reflect some measure of progress from people who respond to this by saying there should be action. It used to be that was bad, as I mentioned. Now, even the right says, oh, there should be action, but it's got to be focused on anything but. And so I'm not here, you know, we love the doors around here, Che, but I'm not here to talk to you about door reform. I'm here to talk to you about gun reform, and you've been thinking about this and working around Democratic campaigns. What do you see as the key issues?
Well, you know, I hate to say something negative about President Biden's optimism about a deal, and I do think Senator Chris Murphy has been heroic in trying to get a deal, but the reality is Mitch McConnell simply will not allow a deal. He will not allow something to get through the filibuster and allow a common sense gun reform to happen. The reason is simple. Guns are intrinsic to the GOP narrative. Guns basically go to their narrative that there is a red state culture that is under siege by racial minorities, by sexual minorities, by gender, by women, etc. They are coming after you, the lonely white male rural voter. And you need your guns, you need your assault weapons, and the assault weapons are symbols that the GOP will allow their voters to fight back against the siege. Now, will Mitch McConnell give up that narrative because of for common sense, for something that makes a lot of sense, for the sake of, you know, children, past and present and future? No, I don't think so. I think that they are too tied to the idea they have to win elections. And they believe that guns are the pathway to winning elections. It allows them to frame a narrative that, let's be honest, has been extremely successful for them for many, many years.
Right, so you say that. Let's look here on deaths in America. You talk about what's the government's role to protect people, be that safety and law and order. Just fundamentally, we could put this up. Police killed by gunfire, 64. That's the threat they face. U.S. troops, less than that right now, given where the footprint is. Black Americans killed by police, 139. All Americans, over 1,000. Children killed by guns. When you widen out even farther, you see that while we cover this in a certain way, and I've been trying to be careful about where the press tries to do a good job, and maybe we fall down.
Right.
But think about these different issues, Che, and look at how many children, our minors and younger, our, you know, elementary school, face this. Is there some fact-based way to galvanize people around that when you talk about suburbs and swing voters?
Look, Ari, it's not about facts. The facts are on our side. It's about culture. The reason that gun reform has not happened is gun control is tied to cultural liberalism. There is a sense among rural Americans that this is an urban elite value that is being enforced upon them. The GOP speaks directly to that culture war. This is why when you poll gun control measures, individual measures are very, very popular. However, gun control overall, particularly in states that Democrats have to win to control the Senate, to have the Electoral College, to win the House, gun control overall is unpopular. Now, how do we change that? Well, some people may not like me saying this, but we need to learn from our opponents. We need to play the long game. The Republicans did that on abortion. They did that on reproductive rights. They played a very long game over the course of 50 years. What they did is they focused on states. They focused on state legislators. They figured out, how do we talk about this issue in a way that cuts the other side? How, when they're distracted by issues like the economy, can we get judges on the bench? They played a very cunning, very deceptive long game. Now, I'm not saying that we need to be deceptive like that, but we do need to think past, you know, the next election, the next polling cycle, the next news cycle. Ever since I've been in politics, that's all Democrats talk about. What are we going to do before the next polls come out? That's our mindset. The GOP doesn't think that way. They think in the long term. They think not about the next election, but the next decade, the next generation. And that's where we have an advantage. Young people don't like guns. They have been raised in a post-Columbine world where they have been terrified by mass shootings that continue to happen. That is where our future lies, and that's the type of strategy we need to forge to sort of move this issue forward.
Really interesting. You raised several intersecting issues there, as well as the generational piece. This generation, which talk about mental health and anxiety, deals with all of that, but also is doing school shooting drills all the time. And how do you do that with hearts and minds? And you say it in a way that I know is different than some of the D.C. Beltway Democratic discourse, and yet that's why we come to you. So, Jay, thanks for being here.
Good to be here, Ari.